Let's be honest. The Cleveland Browns have never been the type of franchise to make bold, headline-grabbing quarterback moves that actually work out. Fans know the drill. Hope builds in the offseason, a shiny new QB walks in, the season starts, and by week 10, Cleveland is back to Googling next year's draft class. But this isn't the same old Browns. This is the Browns planting their flag in the middle of the NFL battlefield and saying, "This is our guy, and we're betting $250 million on him."
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Shedeur Sanders didn't just get a rookie deal. He didn't just get a prove-it year. He walked off the field after torching the Carolina Panthers, 24 completions on 31 attempts, 3 touchdowns, and more command than most veterans. And the ink was already drying on one of the biggest contracts in league history. $250 million. For a rookie who's played just long enough to make defensive coordinators around the league start scrambling for new game plans. And here's the part that makes it even juicier. This wasn't some impulsive, PR-driven splash to sell jerseys. The Browns front office has been quietly running the numbers, combing through every piece of film, analyzing every snap of practice, every leadership moment in the locker room, and the data kept spitting out the same result. This guy is different. Not different in the way teams sometimes overhype a solid rookie. Different in the sense of generational. Owner Jimmy Haslam didn't even pretend to play it safe. The word out of Berea is that a good chunk of the front office wanted to slow play the deal. They wanted to see more games, more reps, maybe wait until year 2. But Haslam saw what everyone saw in that Panthers game. The poise, the way the huddle locked in when Shedeur spoke, the pinpoint passes into tight coverage, and he decided hesitation was a luxury the Browns couldn't afford. Because if you've been a Browns fan long enough, you know that the NFL doesn't wait. Talent like this doesn't sit around on the shelf. If you don't lock it down, someone else will. Of course, not everyone is celebrating. The moment the extension hit the news, critics came out swinging. Former players called it reckless. Some analysts said it was insane to hand over $250 million to a quarterback without a full season of starts. Others, hiding behind the word concerns, questioned whether this was more about marketing than football. The unspoken suggestion? That the Browns were cashing in on Shedeur's name and brand just as much as his arm. But here's the thing. Brand doesn't put a 30-yard strike right between the numbers while a blitzing linebacker is 3 steps from planting you into the turf. Brand doesn't stand in the pocket, scan through 3 reads, and hit the tight end in stride on 3 RD and 9. Brand doesn't control the game clock like you've been in the league for 10 years. Shedeur Sanders does. And he does it with a calm that almost unnerves defenders. Teammates have already started talking about how he carries himself differently. Defensive captain Myles Garrett reportedly told someone after the Panthers game, "It's like he's been here before." And that's not a compliment Garrett hands out lightly. But let's not pretend this historic extension hasn't stirred the pot in the locker room. When you hand a rookie the richest contract on the team, some veterans are going to feel a type of way about it. There are whispers, a few players side-eyeing the deal, wondering what it means for their own futures. Football may be a team sport, but it's also a business, and when $250 million drops on one guy, everyone else starts thinking about their slice of the pie. That's where Shedeur's leadership is going to get tested in ways the stat sheet won't show. He's going to have to walk into that locker room every day and prove, not just to fans or the media, but to the guys in the trenches with him, that he's worth it. That means putting in the work, taking hits, and delivering when the game's on the line. That means owning mistakes when they happen, because they will happen, and coming back sharper the next snap. The coaching staff is already pivoting to make the most of him. Offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt has been sketching out play designs that take advantage of Shedeur's ridiculous processing speed and accuracy. Expect more spread formations, more tempo changes, more layered passing concepts that keep defenses guessing. But there's a cost to that too. Tailoring the offense to your quarterback's strengths sometimes leaves role players grumbling if it means fewer touches or changes to their assignments. And yes, that friction is already brewing behind the scenes. Then there's the league-wide fallout. You can bet that right now, in at least a dozen NFL war rooms, GMs are staring at this contract and wondering if the Browns just changed the entire market for young quarterbacks. It used to be that you waited until year 3, maybe year 4, to hand out the mega deal. Now Cleveland has set a precedent. If a rookie blows you away, you don't wait, you pay. That's going to send ripples into every negotiation from here on out. Shedeur himself? He's taking it all in stride. In post-extension interviews, he barely mentioned the money. Instead, he kept circling back to preparation, consistency, and what he still needs to improve. That's the part that drives his critics crazy. They want to paint him as a hype machine, a marketing play, but he keeps undermining that narrative by doing the most boring thing imaginable, being relentlessly professional. Even with the spotlight brighter than ever, he's not falling for the trap of trying to prove the contract in one game. He knows the real test isn't the first month after signing. It's the grind of November when the weather turns cold, the defense is banged up, and the playoff race is tight. That's when we'll find out if this deal was a stroke of genius or a cautionary tale. But here's what makes the $250 million gamble feel less like a gamble and more like a calculated investment. Shedeur's already shown he can adjust. In the Panthers game, when the defense shifted mid-drive and tried to disguise coverage, he didn't panic. He shifted protections, checked into a new play, and hit his receiver for a chunk gain. That's not raw talent, that's high-level football IQ. And when you combine that with his physical tools, you start to see why the Browns were willing to go all in. Cleveland fans have been here before with the next big thing, but this time it feels different. This time, the guy under center isn't just a strong arm with potential. He's a complete package with the mental game, leadership, and skill set to actually deliver. And now, with $250 million behind him, the Browns have made it crystal clear they're building the future around Shedeur Sanders. If it works, we'll look back at this as the moment the Browns stopped being the NFL's punchline and started being a powerhouse. If it doesn't, well, let's just say the city of Cleveland has survived heartbreak before. But for now, the hope is real, the energy is electric, and the Shedeur era has officially begun, with the loudest statement a team can make. We believe. Here's the part the headlines aren't telling you. That $250 million extension for Shedeur Sanders isn't just a sports move, it's a cultural earthquake for the NFL. When the Browns signed that deal, they didn't just lock in their quarterback. They ripped up the unwritten playbook of how teams handle rookies, rewrote the timeline for trust in young talent, and told the rest of the league, we're not waiting for history to happen. We're making it now. Let's break down why this matters beyond the box score. First, the timing. Teams almost never hand out monster extensions this early in a player's career, especially a rookie who hasn't even hit the halfway point of his first season. That's because conventional wisdom says you gather as much data as possible before committing generational money. Cleveland didn't just ignore that wisdom, they set it on fire. Because every single sign, from the first day of training camp to the Panthers game, screamed that Sanders was different. His film study habits, his in-game adjustments, his ability to elevate teammates in high-pressure moments, these weren't rookie flashes. They were patterns. And patterns get you paid. Second, the symbolism. This isn't just about football production. This is about a franchise that's been searching for the guy for decades, suddenly looking the city in the eye and saying, we found him and he's ours. The Browns aren't just betting on a player, they're betting on an identity shift. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback, he's now the face of Cleveland sports. That means when the Cavs are in the offseason and the Guardians are midseason, it's still Shedeur's face on billboards downtown. That's a level of brand power that bleeds into every corner of the organization. And let's be real, the locker room ripple effects are going to be fascinating. No matter how much players talk about, it's all about the team. When one guy's contract jumps from rookie money to 9 figures overnight, it changes the air in the building. Veterans who've been grinding for years might wonder why their own extensions haven't been pushed through. Role players might calculate how much cap space is left for them. It's human nature. The Browns front office now has to manage not just the cap sheet, but the emotions of a roster that just saw one of its youngest members become one of the richest. Now, some will say this deal is reckless because Shedeur hasn't been tested over a full season. And sure, there's always risk. Defenses will start adjusting, game planning specifically for him, throwing exotic looks he hasn't seen before. But that's exactly why Cleveland moved now, because the kid has already shown he can process those changes in real time. Against Carolina, when the Panthers disguised a safety blitz, Sanders didn't blink. He shifted the protection, called out the hot route, and delivered a 22-yard completion like he'd been reading NFL defenses for a decade. You don't fake that kind of football IQ. But here's the undercurrent that's going to make this story even bigger: the politics of the league. There's an old guard in the NFL, executives, analysts, even some coaches, who are uncomfortable with a player like Shedeur getting this much this fast. They see him as part of the new generation of quarterbacks who understand they're not just athletes, but brands. They see the merch drops, the media savvy, the millions of followers, and they think it's too much too soon. They want quarterbacks to earn it the traditional way, which usually means years of service and playing nice with the system before cashing in. Cleveland just blew that mindset to pieces. And it's not just NFL execs who are watching. Every top QB prospect in college right now has taken note. You better believe that in locker rooms at Alabama, USC, and Colorado, young quarterbacks are looking at Shedeur's deal and thinking, if I can light it up as a rookie, I don't have to wait until year 4 to get my payday. That's going to change negotiations, agent strategies, and draft day expectations. The Browns didn't just sign a quarterback, they might have shifted the entire rookie contract landscape. There's also the fan factor, and in Cleveland, that's no small thing. This city has been burned before. The jersey with 30-plus quarterback names scribbled on the back isn't just a meme, it's a scar. The fans have every reason to be skeptical when the front office makes a big move. But the difference here is that they've seen Shedeur win before the ink dried. He's not a hope. He's not a draft day highlight reel. He's a quarterback who just dismantled an NFL defense with efficiency and confidence, and then carried himself like it was business as usual. That's why, for the first time in a long time, Cleveland fans aren't rolling their eyes at a headline, they're buying in. Of course, the pressure is now astronomical. Every incompletion, every interception, every bad game will be framed as, is he worth $250 million? That's the price of the crown. But Shedeur's demeanor might be his biggest asset here. He doesn't seem to get caught up in the noise, not when people doubted him before the draft, not when critics said he was just a product of hype, and not now, when the spotlight is hotter than it's ever been. And let's not overlook the marketing windfall this represents for the Browns. With Shedeur as the face of the franchise, you can expect primetime games, national TV spots, and a flood of merchandise. Season ticket sales? Through the roof. Jersey sales? Already on backorder. Even casual fans outside Cleveland are tuning in because Shedeur's story isn't just about football. It's about proving people wrong, redefining rookie expectations, and doing it all with a calm, unshakable swagger. But the chess game here isn't over. The Browns now have to protect their investment. That means improving the offensive line to keep him upright, continuing to surround him with weapons, and building a scheme that maximizes his skill set without overexposing him. It means preparing for the day when defenses inevitably adjust and force him to evolve again. If they handle that right, this deal won't just be remembered as a headline, it'll be remembered as the moment Cleveland became a perennial contender. For now, though, the Browns have done what few franchises have the guts to do. They've bet big on a quarterback before the rest of the league could catch up. If Shedeur keeps playing like he did against Carolina, they won't just win games. They'll own the narrative, rewrite the rulebook, and make that $250 million look like a bargain. And somewhere, in front offices across the NFL, there are GMs staring at their depth charts, wondering if they just let Cleveland steal the future. Alright, so if the $250 million Shedeur-Sanders deal was the Browns' drop the mic moment, then what comes next is the part that decides whether this becomes the NFL's smartest investment of the decade or a cautionary tale teams whisper about in draft rooms. Because once you commit that kind of money, you're not just paying for what the player is, you're paying for what they will become. The first thing to understand is that Shedeur's value to Cleveland is both football and cultural capital. On the field, you're talking about a quarterback who reads defenses with the patience of a surgeon, but still has the reflexes to pull the trigger when a window opens for less than a second. That Panthers game was the proof of concept: clean mechanics, precise ball placement, pocket mobility without panic, and a complete command of the huddle. That's why the deal happened so fast. It wasn't just the numbers, it was the intangibles that coaches obsess over. But the Browns didn't sign him just to throw touchdowns. They signed him to change who they are. This is a franchise that's been defined for decades by instability under center. Every new quarterback came with the same recycled line: maybe this is the guy. Shedeur is the first time in years they've been able to say, no, this is the guy, and back it up with both performance and presence. That's why his contract is as much about image reconstruction as it is about yardage. Of course, changing a team's DNA doesn't happen overnight. And here's where the real challenge comes: keeping the locker room aligned when one player becomes the player. Shedeur is already the most marketable figure in Cleveland sports, bigger than the top scorer on the Cavs, bigger than the Guardians' ace pitcher. When your quarterback has billboards downtown and national commercials before he's even played a regular season game in December, you've got to manage that dynamic carefully. Veteran players, especially those grinding in less glamorous roles, might feel the shadow creeping over them. The Browns' leadership will have to make sure this doesn't turn into quiet resentment. They'll need to emphasize that Shedeur's spotlight brings opportunity for the entire roster. More primetime games mean more eyes on everyone, and a winning record with a charismatic QB means the whole team cashes in when contracts come up. From a pure football perspective, the front office has to shift into quarterback preservation mode. Step 1. Protect him. That means drafting and signing linemen not just for run blocking, but specifically for their ability to maintain pass pockets for a QB who thrives on scanning the field rather than bailing too early. A strong left tackle becomes as important as any receiver. Step 2. Weapons. You don't hand someone $250 million and then ask them to carry the team without help. Amari Cooper's already a high-end target, but the Browns will have to keep stacking receivers with complementary skill sets, possession guys who can find soft spots in zones, burners who can stretch the field, and versatile backs who can catch out of the backfield. Shedeur's at his most dangerous when the defense has to cover every blade of grass. Step 3. Scheme flexibility. Shedeur's college tape and NFL debut show he's a master at pre-snap recognition and adjusting protections, so you give him an offense with multiple branching options per play. Think less rigid play calls, more choose your own adventure, based on what he sees. That's how you get maximum ROI on the contract. You let him be the quarterback, not just the thrower. But while the football side is critical, the off-field game is where Shedeur could redefine what it means to be a franchise QB in the modern NFL. The Browns didn't just sign a player, they signed a media empire. The merch sales, the documentary potential, the endorsement deals, every one of those adds to the team's revenue streams. Cleveland is no longer just selling season tickets, they're selling membership in the Shedeur era. Here's where it gets interesting. When your quarterback is this big this fast, you start making organizational decisions around him in ways you wouldn't for anyone else. Marketing departments sync campaign launches with his big games. Social media teams tailor content around his personality. Even stadium atmosphere changes. Entrance music, halftime entertainment, fan engagement, they all become extensions of his brand. And yes, the NFL will notice. Rival owners are already calculating how much jersey sales spike when your quarterback becomes a household name. They're watching how Shedeur's story pulls in non-traditional fans, people who maybe don't watch football every week but will tune in for him. That crossover appeal is gold for a league always chasing younger, more diverse audiences. Now, here's the flip side, the risk. Because as much as the Browns just tied their future to Shedeur Sanders, they also put him in a pressure cooker. Every bad throw will trend on social media. Every loss will be dissected not just in sports talk but in mainstream news. If the team starts slow next season, the narrative shifts instantly. Was the $250 million a mistake? And the thing about narratives is, once they start, they're hard to stop. This is where Shedeur's mental game will matter as much as his physical one. He's going to have to stay locked in, avoid the temptation to clap back at every critic, and trust that performance will do the talking. And from what we've seen so far, he's built for it. That calm demeanor in post-game interviews isn't an act, It's the product of years of high-expectation environments, from high school to college to now the NFL. What I find fascinating is how personal this deal feels for Cleveland. This isn't just front office strategy, it's owner Jimmy Haslam saying, "I'm not letting another star walk out the door." After watching the Browns cycle through quarterbacks like they're auditioning for a reality show, Haslam's taking the opposite approach. Find the right one early, pay him before anyone else can, and build the empire around him. And look, haters are going to hate. You'll hear the usual talking points: he's unproven, they overpaid, it's just one big game. But here's the truth. The NFL is a league where windows close fast. Injuries happen. Rosters turn over. Chemistry fades. If you find your guy, you don't wait until the perfect moment. You make the moment. That's exactly what Cleveland just did. Over the next year, watch for the ripple effects. Watch for other teams to start keeping an eye on their rookies, wondering if they can pull a Shedeur move before the market explodes. Watch for college quarterbacks to start building their brand before they hit the draft, hoping to land in a situation like this. Watch for the Browns to suddenly become a primetime fixture, not because the NFL feels sorry for them, but because the league knows Shedeur is ratings gold. Most importantly, watch for the city of Cleveland to change how it talks about its football team. For once, they're not crossing their fingers or holding their breath, they're expecting greatness. That's a dangerous kind of confidence for a fan base that's been burned before, but it's also the first step in turning maybe into finally. If Shedeur delivers on even 80% of the promise this contract implies, the Browns didn't just sign a quarterback, they signed a legacy. And if he delivers 100%, well, they might just have signed the man who erases decades of frustration in one era-defining run.